When Apple says they're moving to India, they're not correcting reporters when reporters say they're moving production. They're not really moving production. They're moving assembly. So the depth and breadth of manufacturing taking place in China is basically getting the iPhone to like a sub-assembled state. Then it's shipped to India where it's final, where it goes through final assembly.
And why would you want to do that?
Okay, because tariff law only requires that there's one last substantive change to the product, and then you can say made in India.
Okay.
So if you go through that process, you avoid any tariff.
So if India has good trade relations with the United States, they're going to want to do as much of that through India as possible.
Yeah.
Of course, President Trump wants them to do it in the United States.
Yeah, and that's just
Not gonna
nonsense.
happen.
We can talk about that, but I mean, it's one of these things that it's surprising that it keeps coming up because
So
we're nowhere near that.
just put it to bed. Why do you think that's impossible?
Let me give you sort of two answers. One is just like the population. Like we just don't have that like Nietzschean will to power we talked about for like manufacturing is our thing. Like China, entire policies are tailor-made for manufacturing to be, you know, to have capital lured into the country and to have these tax exempt zones where everything's built and then shipped off. Like we just do not have that, and we're not going to have that, and we're not going to be competitive. We don't have the low wages. We don't have the dynamism of the population, the density of the population. We don't have the experiential know-how. Like there's probably 15 other things. So it really just is a fantasy.
By the way, even if we could, the story that you tell is a 10, 15-year story. I mean, from the time that China started to move into China until this entire ecosystem was created is a 15-year story.
I think it's probably a 40-year story. It really is 1980 to the present.
But let's assume it's 15.
Well, you're making it too easy.
It's long enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if to move stuff here would take, you know, to build an entire ecosystem that could build iPhones would take a decade at least.
One thing I would say, Apple's under such political pressure, not from Beijing, from Washington, that it would not be shocking to hear that there are going to be some iPhones made in the US, but it would just be the assembly. It would be a show and tell party. Exactly.
Okay.
But politically, they're being put in such a bind that might have to be the next press release. But I would call.
But you think, regardless of the window dressing, Apple's going to stay in China?
I think they have to. The other answer I wanted to give is historical, which is that Apple wanted to make the Mac Pro in Texas, and it's such a fiasco that like two things happen. One, engineers from Foxconn, Chinese engineers, have to come into the Flex factory in Texas to actually make this happen.
Why?
Because we don't have the skill set.
We don't have the skill set.
Yeah, we're in the heartland of Texas, and like we just don't have the experiential know-how to make it happen. And so, irony of ironies, we're bringing the very people that we've trained over the last 10 years to make it happen. So that's one thing that's crazy. The other thing is that's to make a product in volumes of 500 or 600 per day. The iPhone's 1 million per day. If you're not making Mac Pros in Texas, you're sure as hell not making iPhones anytime soon.